Hello everyone, and welcome to After Alexander. Episode 103, Hitting a Brick Wall. Last time, we explored the world of the Mediterranean just after the death of Antiochus III. We found a region bubbling with tension, anti-Roman resentment, and plots. Today, we are going to move through the years at a breakneck pace. I know I've been building up how Seleucus IV is at the start of a new era, but today I'll just say, don't get too attached to him. The Seleucids under Seleucus IV had only one goal: to rebuild the treasury. They were hampered in this by continuously needing to pay off the Romans every year. Edwin Bevan tells us that the Seleucids were now paying the price for the wars of Antiochus III. Not only that, but they did not even have a militarily glorious king to offset some of the financial pain the country was now feeling. The leading minister in the royal court was Heliodorus, son of Aeschylus, who came from Antioch. As an aside, it is remarkable to me that we have come far enough in terms of time that a city founded by Seleucus I is now just considered part of the landscape, rather than a new build. Anyway, it is Heliodorus that we now need to talk about. Bevan tells us that, quote, his great position tempted Heliodorus to aspire still higher, end quote. So, he made a plot against Seleucus IV. In 175 BCE, Seleucus IV was assassinated, and Heliodorus most likely proclaimed his young son Antiochus as king. But those dynastic machinations will have to wait for the future. So, that's that reign over with. I know, almost immediately from a narrative perspective. As the title says, we very much just slammed into a brick wall in terms of what we were expecting versus our new reality. It may not seem like it, but 12 years have flown by. Yes, really. All we have on him is financial troubles and an almost war with Rome. Huh. He was around 43 years old when he died, and he had been monarch for 12 rather tepid years. But that doesn't feel like enough in terms of an episode. Let's take it source by source and see whether they have some extra details for us on how Seleucus IV died. I did do a short episode once when Seleucus II perished, and it feels too cheap to do it a second time. Trust me, in narrative terms, this all snuck up on me probably about as much as it did you. The Encyclopaedia Britannica tells us that Seleucus IV did not have an exciting reign. Yeah, you're telling me. However, he didn't have an exciting reign for two reasons: his lack of money and the fact that his eldest son Demetrius was a hostage of the Roman Republic. That's all as maybe, but they give us no more information than we already had on the king's death. Our primary source mentioned by Bevan around these events is the Roman historian Appian, specifically chapter 45 of his Syrian Wars. Interestingly, that source mentions Mithridates in conjunction with the king's death. Appian says that the murder occurred when Mithridates had been released and had made it as far as Athens. This tells me that the hostage exchange of Demetrius for Mithridates had not happened that long before Seleucus' death. If I had to speculate, I would say the swap had taken place the year before in 176 or so. After all, it's not as though Mithridates needed 12 years to get from Rome to Athens. Regardless, Appian tells us that Heliodorus was one of the court ministers who tried to take control of the government of the empire. Interestingly, it does not say he wanted the empire itself, just control of it. I won't go into any more detail than this, as it leaves us open to spoilers for the future, but all I will say is, the Mediterranean is going to have a reaction to this minister killing off the king. As to whether it is notable that Mithridates is mentioned in the same paragraph as Seleucus IV's death, our source doesn't say anything more than that, but I'll leave the speculation as to whether he may have been connected, which is purely a correlation I'm drawing myself based on the two being connected to each other in the same breath for future episodes. Sadly, we cannot rely on the account of another ancient source, namely Diodorus Siculus, for the murder. The relevant book of his histories is Book 29. However, the later sections only exist in fragments. So, Diodorus covers the events before the murder, and those in its aftermath, but not the death itself. Tragically, Polybius also does not appear to mention it. So, the meagre information I've already presented you is all we have. An ambitious minister, a ruler's death, and an acclamation. We will have to deal with the fallout from these events in episode 105. As Edwin Bevan indicates in Volume 2 of his House of Seleucus, the death of Seleucus IV bursts the bubble of calm. However, that will have to wait until 2 episodes from now. Episode 104 is going to be a summary of the life and reign of Seleucus IV, as is our tradition. Not, however, that I think I'm going to have a lot to say. So, I'm going to go now and scratch my head over an epithet I can possibly give him. Until then, thank you all for listening, everyone. Feel free to get in touch at the show's email address if you have any questions or comments. And until next time, have a great week, everyone.